those brothers that you were over there with, what kind of impact do you think that they would have in Africa?
The impact they would have in Africa would be absolutely great. You know, it's not like we spoke before. It's not just boots on the ground. It's the actual contribution that a lot of these people can make, whether they're engineers or they're medical professionals. They are construction workers, electricians. They could be anything from a field sanitation technician who would be able to go through and treat water, to be able to help not only the fledgling nation, but also to wind up helping those nations that are around them. You have, in Africa themselves, you have a lot of poor nations. You also have some rich nations that are there. But you have a lot of poor nations more so that would greatly benefit with the higher standard of living that would come along with a higher education, a higher trained group of people who could step in and can start that work, and who can pick up the shovels if they need to, and they can also specialize in work doing anything from IT work to, like I said, medical. You know, the skill sets that many of the people have are going to be able to not only start, say, a clinic or, some kind of computer area or whatever, but they're also going to be able to help as far as training, where you could be able to pass that knowledge on to the whole continent, as opposed to actually just that initial nation. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I know. Definitely. The long-term effect would be very beneficial.
The long-term effect would be greatly beneficial.
And PJ, sometimes when we talk on the show and we've talked to people about the IAAC's approach to acquiring the land, and we are very firm in that we have the right to acquire this land without any type of quote payment to Africa or Europe. This is a birthright that we have, and it is a quote a God-given right. And it is something that we are very firm on, this acquisition. We don't want to get caught up in some type of study group that has to be done on the impact and et cetera, this and that. We've suffered long enough, and you definitely, since living in St. Louis, you know how different it is within the various communities. So as a person that, if you were a part of an organization such as this, I mean, in our approach of standing firm on acquiring the land and not appeasing anyone, not going to someone else's country and saying we have to prove anything, because we don't need to prove to anyone that we have the right to live on the continent. And what is your view on that? I mean, do you think that we have that right, that we should be firm?
I think very much so you have that right. That is, as opposed to, if you were to go to them and say, with your hand out, gimme, gimme, you're kind of starting the repetition over. You need to go with a firm hand and say, this is what we are going to take, even though take is a strong word. But it has to be known that you're not there just to wind up being a slave to them, to work towards their goals. If you were to go to Angola or, the Congo or something like that and say, this is what we want, okay, that's fine, you can have it, but you're going to wind up working for it and you work to pay it off. That's not going to work, because that's going to be a detriment towards the final goal. You're going to wind up with people who are not happy on either side. You're going to wind up with a group that's feeling that they're being oppressed again, and you're going to wind up with another group who feels that these people are here. Why are they here? They're just here because they think they're going to get something, and that's not going to help anybody in the long run. The communities around you are going to have to understand that for the betterment of the people, whether they be the African Americans, whether they be Africans, even if they are the white South Africans, they're all going to have to understand that it's going to be for the betterment of the complete continent. And in the long run, you're going to wind up bettering the world through this, because you're going to wind up with a stronger nation that, who knows, maybe years down the line, could be somebody who's helping the United States for whatever reason, maybe have an oil spill in the Gulf and they need aid. You don't know if you wind up needing to help Britain. You know, it's a country that would be able to stand firm and is not going to be able to stand firm knowing that they owed another people who should have been their people to begin with.
And once again, we are definitely in agreement. I want to remind some of the callers that PJ is not an African American. He's a white guy. And he's, once again, a guy that's been in the Army, whom I respect a tremendous amount, whom I've done a lot of work with in the green building aspect of it. And it's interesting. I wanted to give some of the listeners, once again, a different perspective, a perspective of when, if PJ was in our shoes as a person who's thinking in this kind of manner, of how he understands from the jump, knowing our history, knowing where we were, who we are, knowing that we were sold into slavery, that our right is our right, and we have nothing to fear with accepting this right to return. And it is something that will be beneficial in the long run, and that we cannot repeat the same mistakes that we're currently doing of begging. And that's it. We need to be responsible people. And PJ, when you look at America now, let's talk about America itself. What do you see the problem? What do you see America going right now?
I see America going to hell, really. Nobody's taking any kind of personal responsibility for anything. It can be things as simple as the vehicle they drive. You see people on the road driving a death trap, and that's their responsibility to keep that vehicle running to a certain standard. You know, now you can have the government who steps in and they say you have to have these safety inspections. That shouldn't be the case. The case should be you, as a man or a woman, should have enough pride in yourself to be able to accept the responsibilities to do whatever you need to do. And especially those of us who are parents need to pass that along to our youth, where I feel that a lot of the generations that were before us started to become more lax on us, you know, my generation, and definitely the generation that is coming up now, and even into the younger children, where they don't learn that. They have the whole mentality of gimme, gimme, gimme. You know, now you have things like the new health care bill where they say we have to keep our kids on our insurance until they're 26 years old. You know, that's wrong. We shouldn't have to. Not saying that they don't need to be taken care of, but it gives them that sense of entitlement. You know, are you going to have a kid who's going to float through college taking gen ed for 6 years because he knows he's covered? He doesn't have to worry about getting into the real world. You know, we need to worry about taking care of. You need to start at home, and if you don't start at home, you fail your community. And when in the widespread aspect of it, the community is where the main focus needs to be. You understand what I'm getting at?
Yes, definitely. No, and I understand that. And when we look at the lack of parental care or guidance being that a parent has over their child, now how that's being usurped by the state, how parents can't even discipline their own child. What are they learning in the schools right now? And this is the reason why, PJ, like I said, that I am so committed to creating this nation, because I feel as if that, I mean, from your perspective, what do you think of the school system in St. Louis and what you see in the black community out there? What do you see?
Honestly, I think that in St. Louis, I see the black community as being failed. It still has that down south, old down south kind of segregation to it. You know, you have North County, which is predominantly black. You have West County, which is predominantly white. And you look at the school systems in the two, and they're completely different. You have West County schools, which are more entitled to the tax money. And you have North County schools where they're overcrowded, and it's ridiculous.